Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Anthony Sanchez. He's the author of UFO Highway, and he's also got another new book out. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it was pronounced something like Leonid or Leonid. Leonid, okay. And we're going to be talking about a little bit about both of those books tonight. I know a lot of people probably already know Anthony. He's been in the research game for quite some time now, and he's been working with people like Norio Hayakawa, and been getting some interesting reports out of Dulce. And he's talked to a guy who goes by Colonel X because he doesn't want to be his identity revealed because he's blowing a whistle. And he goes into great detail in his UFO Highway in an interview with this guy about what's going on at Dulce, how long it's been going on, how long alien interaction's been going on here on Earth. It's a really in-depth thing. I really recommend the book for anybody that can manage to get it. But real quick, I'm going to let Anthony, kind of tell you guys what got him interested in the UFO phenomena.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on your show, first of all, Royce. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm. Well, back in 1989, most of the people that are familiar with who I am are familiar with this story, but in 1989, when Area 51 started to emerge, as a phenomenon, within the UFO circles and the alien community and whatnot, alien research community, that's when I took a big interest in, UFOs. As from a research perspective, I was 19 years old in 1989, and it was, I figured, well, I'm old enough now, and I'm just getting into computers, and it's something that I felt that it was the next logical step for me, and since that time, it's been about 20 years now. I've been heavily involved in researching UFOs, studying the whole phenomena of exopolitics, discussing whether or not, is it possible that there could be alien life, and what about alien life among us here on Earth? So I've read so many books from so many different authors on the topic, and now, I just started to put out my own books based on research that I've done into the areas of Dulce, human origins, HARP, and Project Bluebeam, and right now, I'm about to release a book called Project Leonid, and the website for that is www.projectleonid.com. And Leonid is spelled just like the Leonid asteroids, the Leonids, and people are familiar with the asteroids, the Leonids. It's like it's a meteor shower. Excuse me. What am I thinking? It's a meteor shower. The Leonids. It's spelled the same exact way. Leo, like the constellation Leo, Leo. And N-I-D, Leonid. Anyway, so Project Leonid is about a classified, it's a top secret project. It's a multifaceted weapon system that's being developed that's very dangerous. And, there's been a lot of engineers a part of the project who have either disappeared or been found dead. Supposedly they committed suicide. Well, we're going to look into that because I know people who, know a lot about this topic, and I really don't want to give out their names right now. I can tell you that through, I don't want to give out their names at this time. Maybe until after the book comes out, because I don't want to draw unwanted attention to the people involved with that. I mean, already, Royce, I don't know if you know about this, but I was visited twice by AFOSI out of Bill Air Force Base, and after the second visit, somebody, I don't know who, I'm not going to say AFOSI because I don't want to get harassed by them again, but somebody broke into my house and stole a 500 gigabyte research hard drive.
Oh, wow.
That hard drive was encrypted, but, the government has technology to decrypt things, and, everybody that was in that, well, I have a small group, a small circle of trusted individuals who were part of, putting together the Dulce interview, the whole thing, the information with the colonel, and they've been harassed now. Well, they're being harassed by AFOSI, so, I'm not going to say it was them, but why are they harassing these people? How did they find out about these people if not through the stolen hard drive? That's a 0.5 terabytes worth of data that's been compromised. Do I have a backup of it? Yeah, I have a backup, but still, it's been compromised, and I've gotten a lot of, communication from people that are part of my circle that they're really upset. They know it's not my fault, but they're still upset at me. Was found out because that was the only area that the information was held on these, sources of mine, and it's been compromised to some extent. There's still information that they'll never get a hold of because it wasn't on a hard drive to begin with. But that's the kind of stuff I've been dealing with. I just went up to Dulce in October, conducted a field investigation. I went up to the Archuleta Mesa, up to the very top. And I found, illegally placed U.S. government property. It literally says, property of the U.S. government. Well, one, that's wrong. Why? Because it's not supposed to be there.
Right.
It's illegal for them to have a presence there in a sovereign nation, without, some levels of accord with the Apache, with the Hickory Apache Reservation, the tribal council. Well, I talked to them. There is no accord in existence between the Hickory Apache Nation and the United States military, let alone the United States government, to allow a military presence up there. Well, we found that, immediately after making that discovery, the whole left side of my body from the shoulder up, so my shoulder, my head, all the way up to the tip of my head and my face has become paralyzed. And no, it's not Bell's palsy. They don't know what it is. And I have it on authority from an intelligence operative who confirmed to me that the symptoms of what I'm exhibiting came about through a nanofraction dosage of the curare plant, which is a South American toxic, a highly toxic plant, and the pufferfish venom, pufferfish poison. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with right now. I'm still seeing specialists. I'm going to see a specialist on the 5th, or excuse me, the 5th of January, who specializes in these types of, neurotoxins. It's gotten real bad. But that was because of the research I did in Dulce. I got there 2:30 in the morning of the 24th, which was a Monday. They had wanted me to be there on Friday of the 21st because I was supposed to meet with Governor Jesse Ventura and the television crew from the True TV network. Renee, the producer of the show, called or tried to get in contact with me, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. And to my surprise, that morning when I got there, 8 o'clock that morning, 8:30 that morning, I met with Leon Reval, who's the public relations officer of the Hickory Apache Nation, and I also met with the tribal council president. You got to remember, this is a sovereign nation. They got their own president, their own vice president. They got an entire executive branch that operates this nation, the Hickory Apache Nation. And by the way, I want to just say this on the record. The Hickory people are the most beautiful people I have ever met. Everybody that I met there in Dulce was so kind, so patient, and, they're just great people. And I'm very privileged and honored to be affiliated with them, through my book, UFO Highway. I have a very, very, very close set of friends who are Hickory Apache, and I'm really excited to be able to call them whenever I want and go there and spend time with them because they're just wonderful people. Well, Governor Ventura, for whatever reason, was not able to get permission to film on the reservation. I was. They let me film. They did not let me interview people on the reservation from Dulce, but they said if I wanted to conduct interviews with any of the Jicarilla Apache Nation, citizens, members, I had to do it off the reservation. So we conducted interviews in Lumberton, Chama, and ultimately the majority of them over in Taos. I was in Taos, New Mexico that week, later that week, for Janet Saylor's ASPE symposium. It's the Alliance Studying Paranormal Experiences.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a great, opportunity for me because I was going to still be within, just within a couple hours of Dulce. And sure enough, I had a bunch of people from Dulce come out to Taos. A couple of them stayed with us in our hotel room, believe it or not. And we conducted interviews. We had full-blown discussions. And the most amazing discussion I had was with a current chief of police from a neighboring community. Now, Royce, I cannot say which neighboring community because you know how it is in politics. One day an individual, may want to run for office or something, and in this case, it actually turns out that's what's going to happen. So at this point in time, they do not want to be, made public. But I can tell you this, that individual was at the table with me, Janet Saylor of ASPE, and Rick Prestel of Sacramento MUFON. So I have witnesses to this. Not only do I have those two individuals as my witness, but the man's adult sons were right there at the table. I don't know, Royce, but it would be very hard for me as a father to sit there at a table with some complete strangers and tell lies. You get my drift?
Right. I don't want to be lied to.
Yeah, this guy was a very, very, he's the chief of police of a community there. And he is a former officer of the Jicarilla Apache Nation. I ain't going to go into it much more beyond that. Other than that, I'll just say it was more than a decade's worth of service as a police officer. Now, this guy was amazing. He told us so much information, it literally blew our socks off. One of the things he did that shocked the heck out of me was I had received some notes. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of papers of documentation from the late Paul Benowitz that were found at an estate sale that were acquired by Mel Fabregas. So Mel had shared that information with me. Now, I was digging through these papers, digging through them. And one of the things I found was a sketch of a UFO that had been created by Paul Benowitz.
Oh, wow. Now, Paul Benowitz no longer with us, right?
Owned a company called Thunder Scientific Corporation, which was literally smack dab right next to, if not on, Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. He had developed a product that was being purchased through a federal contract by Kirtland Air Force Base, the U.S. Air Force, for some of their aircraft. I think it was jet aircraft. I have to look into it. Greg Bishop wrote a great book on Paul Benowitz called, Project Beta. It's a fantastic book, and it's a really, really detailed book on Paul Benowitz's life. So, Paul Benowitz was the guy that had developed his own equipment, proprietary radio equipment, and he had triangulated what he believed to be alien signals between Kirtland Air Force Base, Dulce, New Mexico, and the Monsanto Nuclear Storage Facility, or Coyote Canyon, which is right next to it. He had triangulated signals that he believed were alien in nature. Well, when he did that, he brought it to the attention of AFOSI there at Kirtland Air Force Base. Well, they got all hot and bothered over it, and the first thing that they did was assign Bill Moore. Bill Moore wrote the Roswell incident, which was a really, really, famous book. As a matter of fact, he collaborated with Stanton Freeman on it. So he was assigned, the Air Force went up to him, and they felt differently because he was the most renowned expert on UFOs at the time, reachable, attainable. They paid him to be a disinformation agent and feed Paul Benowitz a bunch of disinformation. Not just feeding him information, but messing with the guy's psyche. I mean, ultimately, Paul Benowitz ended up in a mental institution. Well, there's some dispute to that. I met with the researcher in Dulce who said, don't believe that he died in a mental institution like they're telling us to believe. But that's the story that was put out. The guy that I met in Dulce, who was one of the presenters, said, don't believe that. And Paul Benowitz was perfectly sane when he passed away. But it's just amazing that you got two stories emerging from that. Well, Paul Benowitz, while he was conducting these investigations into Dulce, the aliens that he believed to have found there, he drew a sketch of a UFO that he had seen. Now, this is not your typical type UFO. This is a strange drawing that he had, put together. So strange, in fact, if I were to walk up to 1,000 people and tell them to draw me a UFO, whether they've seen it or just what they think of it,
right?
But none of them would come close to what Paul Benowitz drew. Period. There's just no way. It was too unique in its design. Well, nobody outside of a small group of UFO researchers that I know from Mount Fabregas have come in contact with these estate papers. I don't even think Greg Bishop, who wrote Project Beta, has ever seen these estate papers, from Paul Benowitz. These notes and documentation, hand-drawn, handwritten, a lot of them. Well, this chief of police sat there at the table that evening, and he said, one of the evenings when he was an officer in Dulce, him and his partner were sitting there, and they saw this huge set of lights coming at them. He said it looked like as if a train was coming at them. It passed over them so fast, and they could feel the wind pick up around their truck. And then they saw this thing hover over the mesa, come back down, and they realized it's going to come right back. So this officer told the other guy, his partner, turn off all radio equipment, turn off the lights, turn off the vehicle, everything. He told them, I want you to get that spotlight ready. And before the guy could get the spotlight ready, the thing passed right over them again. But they realized it was going to come around again. And by the second time it passed around, that's when they first noticed this thing didn't make a sound. It was completely silent. The third time this thing was coming around, they were going to time it because they realized they could see the lights, and based on the interval between the first and second time, they were going to track it just right. So they had a high-powered spotlight with them. And this officer told his partner, he says, okay, get ready. 3, 2, 1. And as soon as they counted to 1, they flashed the light up at the craft, and the thing stopped and hovered in midair about 40 to 50 feet above their truck. They were in a truck, actually, they said. It was like a patrol truck or something. Anyhow, as they were shining the light on this, they were standing out of the truck at this point. That craft hovered, it tilted. And there was a cockpit at the front. And inside of it was what the guy described as a gray. He says it looked like your typical. He says, do you remember the characters in Close Encounters of the Third Kind? He said, yeah. He goes, they kind of looked like that. He goes, there was one in there. He goes, and it looked at them.
Kind of like grays.
Yes, and what he thought was strange was that the entire craft was illuminated on the outside and on the inside by a fluorescent, almost purple or lavender-colored light. Now, he had never read my book before, so he had no idea that the colonel had described the lighting systems of the Greys as between a lavender and purplish fluorescent-colored light. So that's connection number 1. Connection number 2 is he felt compelled to draw this craft for me. So he started drawing the craft. And the minute he started drawing what he saw that night, my heart literally sank into my stomach and my jaw dropped. I realized he was drawing the same exact UFO that Paul Benowitz had drawn in his notes some 30 years before. It is a teardrop-shaped UFO that flares out like a flame on one end and is completely round on the other, and it had a cockpit. And it is the strangest looking thing. And I'm going to get this drawing, as soon as I get permission from this individual, I'm going to get this drawing up on UFOhighway.com, which is my website, because I want people to see this. But Janet Saylor of Aspie from Angel Fire, New Mexico, she was there. She saw it. Rick Prestel of Sacramento MUFON, he saw it. The man's 2 adult, full-grown sons are there. They saw it. So there's just no way this guy's not telling the truth. I mean, when you looked into his eyes, you just saw a level of conviction that you knew he was relieved to finally be showing somebody. It's like his sons knew of this stuff, by the way. They knew about this. But you could tell he was relieved to finally be telling someone outside of his family and probably outside of his close group of friends about this event. It was
it sounds like he's not the only one that's had a similar experience, though, is he?
No, he says that many of the police officers there in Dulce, and in addition to the families, have all seen that craft and similar other craft. This is the gentleman who told me that he and his partner, again, same partner, had witnessed a craft, a different craft, enter or leave, come out of, and then enter back in a holographic entrance right near the radio towers on Archuleta Mesa. And he also said that on the southwest portion of the mesa, there's another holographic entrance. So there's a confirmation from the people that who live there and work there that there is a facility there. Well, people keep telling us, no, there isn't. There's nothing up there. There is no military up there. Well, I went up there, and I found U.S. government property. So you tell me who's lying.
Probably the last guy you was referring to.
That's right. So I think that, the government, the people that, and the shields for the government, there's a lot of serious UFO researchers out there who are just totally against the Dulce story. They're totally against UFO Highway, my book. They're against Colonel X. They're making these stupid assumptions on whether or not the Colonel is in fact real. There's a DD-214 that was provided to me, by the National Personnel Records Center on the Colonel. In the document, it identifies Dulce. 2, there's a separation order. There's some type of like a clerical error at best behind the separation order, because the separation order that's on the DD-214 came after the Colonel had already left the military. Now, here's my problem with that. This one of these UFO researchers who's against me sent that into a federally funded agency. This is a federally funded agency who he sent it into to vet the document. They took one look at it and said, oh, yeah, this is a hoax. Do you think, Royce, do you honestly think that the government or a federally funded body of the government, a subcontractor or whatever, is going to admit to the existence of an underground base that houses both Greys and the U.S. military?
Not if they had a choice, they wouldn't know.
Exactly, and they do not have it. Their lives are on the line, and that idiot knows it, and I know it, yet that's their argument, and it's just utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. I'm telling you, Royce, there's an underground facility right there in Dulce, New Mexico, and the reason why that place needs to be outed is because, like Dr. Michael Sala says, there is a huge potential for human rights violations that are occurring there in Dulce, not just on the people that are being abducted through My Lab's programs and are living there in Dulce, but the people that live there in Dulce, on the surface, in the township. There's the highest rate of cancers among people that live in New Mexico occurring right there. And then, no, it's not because of what they eat. Don't buy into this, oh, well, they all eat fast food. Guess what? These people, when I went there, the host family that I was with, the day before, I'm not kidding you, they killed a deer the day before. That night we had dinner with them. Guess what we were eating? Or that day we were having lunch with them. Guess what we were eating? Deer. We were eating deer meat.
Well, that's a pretty lean meat, so you can't really blame it on fatty foods then.
Exactly. So, I mean, they were eating peas, green peas. What else did they have? Green chilies. They had deer meat, and they were drinking lemonade. I mean, I'm telling you, it just doesn't stand out. The argument, that we're hearing, the arguments that we hear for the high rates of cancer just don't make sense. Not for the people in Dulce. There's a very healthy group of people up there. A lot of them are exercising. A lot of them are out there up on the mesa doing stuff. And there's the athletics program at the school there. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's hard to believe that the level of cancer that's occurring is because of their diet. I don't buy that. I don't buy that one bit.
Is this happening with the Indians as well, or just the people in the towns?
Well, the people in the town are Indians. They're Hickory Apache.
I was thinking that there was a separate reservation and then town folk. I had that mixed up. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. A lot of people think that. No, the Hickory Apache make up 99.99% of the population in Dulce. So these are the actual Apache, this is the Apache Nation is right. The Hickory Apache Nation is pretty much Dulce, New Mexico, and, that whole area. So, it's called Rio Rima County. That part of Rio Rima County pretty much is predominantly a Hickory Apache, and especially the Dulce Township. So there's cancers that are occurring. Why? Because we know from the colonel that there is toxic waste that is being deposited in, underground areas that's affecting the underground water tables. And like over in the Carson National Forest, over to the southwest portion, most people are not aware of this, but the Carson National Forest is actually made up of two predominant separate areas. And there's one that's west of Dulce, southwest of Dulce, and that's where Project Gas Buggy occurred, which was an explosion that had taken place as part of Project Plowshares, which was this initiative by the Department of, I think it was the Department of Energy, to use nuclear explosions to release natural deposits of gas. And we now know that the true reason why was, at least there at Project Gas Buggy, was because that area was being prepped for a new installation that was going to be developed sometime later. In 1981, I think they were supposed to. No, excuse me. In I forget the dates, but I know that in 1991 is when they completed the scientific auxiliary there, which is TAD3, which is where they conduct super soldier programs, genetic engineering programs, and it actually serves as a deposit for toxic materials that are coming from the primary location, which is TAD1, that's within the mesa. How do we know this? Because they built, in 1981, they built a federally funded micro reservoir. It's a water abatement. They tried to sell it off as, it's for the cattle. Well, guess what? No cattle will go near that area because the cattle were all dying and they got smart. They wanted to stop dying. I know this firsthand from ranchers in the area. The cattle won't drink from that Leandro tank, period, because it's contaminated. They can tell that it's contaminated. And it's right on top of the area. I mean, literally the ground zero of Project Gas Buggy, the 1967 explosion. So
anybody that goes out there near that area is subject to some kind of radiation or other form of.
For a while they weren't allowed to go out there but then the government, took out their, like Geiger counters and whatnot. And they determined, okay, well, on the surface it's now safe, but we know that underneath it's probably not safe. And there's probably, I would bet you $100 that if you went out there with the Geiger counter today, you would detect high levels of radiation. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You think that had anything to do with your paralysis?
I don't think so. No, my paralysis came about in a different way. Initially we thought because I was physically handling the containers, these military-grade steel shipping containers for F-5 jet engines, which we have found up on the mesa, we had thought that, touching them had put me in contact with some type of a substance that made me sick. But that wasn't the case. We later found out that my health was compromised by some woman who we believe was an operative who was at a restaurant, because we since did the research and found out that the woman that served me the morning after that discovery event up there on the Mesa, nobody can identify who she is because she doesn't work there. She does not work there. Yeah. So everybody is like, these are the people that live in Dulce. One of the host families, in fact, knows a young woman who works there, who I do recognize, and an older woman who's about 70 years old who works there. They know both of them, and they said, those are the only two women that work there. And I'm telling them, no, the woman who served me, she was an American Indian, she wasn't Spanish, she had like an olive tone, olive skin complexion, and she was about 40 years old, extremely attractive. She just did not fit the mold to be working in this, restaurant that I went to. Well, she served me, and somebody that I talked to, an intelligence officer or operative, told me that, he believes that individual, based on additional details that I provided to him about her facial, her facial characteristics, her height, which she was taller than the average woman. She was about 5'10", 5'11", very tall, but also very, very attractive, which was just strange. He says that he believes she was a product, not a human, but a product developed in a lab, is what he's saying to me. Like some type of like a cybernetic organism. If
like an automatron?
Exactly. And he says they use them, and the details that I provided to him, matches up with other incidents.
I've seen a news article here about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, and it had a picture of what looked like a very attractive Chinese woman. And when you read the article, it went on to say that this was actually advanced technology from China or Japan or somewhere that was supposed to be an automatron or the latest thing in robots. So what you're describing is something that even the private or the private sector is starting to catch up to now themselves.
Well, you're gonna not believe this, because if that guy is listening to this show, I know his jaw just hit the ground, because when he asked me to describe the woman to him, and I said to him, what was strange is that she had an olive skin complexion, kind of like, from the Mediterranean area, like southern Spain or Italy or in that area of Europe, but that she almost looked Eurasian to me. Half European, half Asian, Eurasian. And that's when he just said, well, you just confirmed it for me, Anthony. He goes, because that's the design. That's the design of these created products. And what you just said was, it matches up. And I have a witness to this, Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot. So
she's a good witness to have. She works with Bill Ryan a lot, or at least she used to.
Yeah. So Carrie Cassidy, has become a real good friend of mine, and she's just an amazing woman, and I'm very happy to have this affiliation with her, because what we've been doing is performing a cross-correlation of data. Carrie has some of the most critical whistleblowers that we know of, amongst her group. And it is data from her whistleblowers that is cross-correlating and matching up with data from my two whistleblowers. So we actually met, and it was a very good meeting. It went well, and I'm very proud to be affiliated with her and Project Camelot, because I needed to reach out at one point in time to people that I could trust, and she proved to me that I could trust her, and that was just an enormous win for me, because I have a good friend now, a new friend, and a really good friend.
Okay, now we've had a couple questions in the chat room, if I can try to get back to them. By the way, Anthony, one of them earlier was Jennifer was wanting to know what an AFO was.
AFOSI, that's Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
Okay, now there was another one that she had asked that I'm trying to remember. Okay, she was asking about where the Jicarilla Nation was, because I told her I thought it was in New Mexico, and she said New Mexico is not a state. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm confusing you because I'm not geographically intelligent. So I thought maybe you could help straighten that out.
Yeah, no, New Mexico is a state. It's one of the 50 states, and it's in between Arizona and Texas. And the northern part of New Mexico, it runs into the southern portion of Colorado. So Dulce, New Mexico, is the Jicarilla Apache Nation. Now that's the northern part of New Mexico, the northmost part of New Mexico. Get tongue-tied there. And what most people don't realize is the Archuleta Mesa, half of it's in New Mexico, and the other half's in Colorado. Well, guess what? On the Colorado side, there is the Utes, the Southern Ute Indian Nation. The Ute Indian Nation is up there. But, the Mesa is massive in size. Most people do not realize this, but the Mesa is a huge, huge plateau. It is massive. And it took us literally almost 2 hours to get up to the top. And we were going over some rough terrain. And but it's also one of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm so glad to have friends there because I will be going back. The guy that took us up there to the top was a police officer in Dulce for 7 years. He was a police officer, and he himself has seen numerous UFOs right there in Dulce Rock, which is the vicinity of where he lives. And between the township of Farmington, which is way out west, the westernmost area of New Mexico, all the way back to Dulce, and then all the way out to Taos. This guy, in addition to many of his family members and friends, they have seen so many UFOs. In 2011 alone, in the summer of this year, they have been spotting a massive copper-colored disc. It's a traditional disc-shaped UFO. In the book UFO Highway, there's a picture of a UFO that we have in there that's an artist's rendition. But that is based off of what these people are seeing. And there are two of them that are like, one of them is 300 feet in circumference, and the other one, the copper-colored one, is 150 feet, about half the size. The smaller one is copper-colored. The larger one is silver-colored. Also this year, there's been 9 silver-colored discs flying in formation. Now, I don't know if it's based on the heights or not, but the people that have been seeing them say they think they're smaller than the copper-colored ones. Or if they are the 300-foot wide ones, they're up so high that they just appear to be smaller. So 9 of them have been seen flying in formation on multiple times, and I have all of these incidents documented. They're going to be coming out, later on my website, ufohighway.com, or in another book or something. These incidents have been happening since the summer of 2011, and some of the people that came forward were absolute skeptics. They did not believe in UFOs, period. And now they're convinced. And actually, they're frightened, and they want answers.
I can imagine that. So I think I would too if I was them. Now, I was going to also mention Genocide asked in the chat room about said he was interested in the super soldier stuff, but he also asked if you ever heard of Duncan O'Finian, O'Finian.
Yes, I've heard of Duncan O'Finian. Yeah, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. That's interesting. I just reached out to Duncan O'Finian, who, by the way, has an amazing story. When I became familiar with Carrie Cassidy, I started learning. I actually also became friends with Lorian Fenton. She's actually my editor for my book and serves as my publicist. And I guess Lorian knows these guys, and obviously Carrie Cassidy knows these guys because I don't know if she helps them with their books or their shows or but I know they're affiliated somehow. But I reached out to Duncan O'Finian on Facebook, and at first, he asked me, "Who are you, and why do you want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Oh, wow, I know Carrie and I know Lorian, and I know a little bit about the MK Ultra program." and how, facets of the MK Ultra program were used to condition, these super soldiers. And it's very unfortunate what happened to a lot of these guys. And I don't know all the details, but I do know that it's very sad that they were subjected from childhood to some very, very, difficult and arduous programs that affected their health, affected their psyche, and it's just really not fair what they did to them. And I really, I want to reach out to those people that have been affected, by that, and let them know that, I'm one of their supporters, and I know that shit's real, and I know that stuff's real, and I feel really bad for those guys. So, Duncan O'Finian, he's probably the most famous super soldier that I know of, because I cannot tell you the names of any of the other guys, because I really don't know them that well. But I'm very familiar with Duncan's story because of my recent affiliation with Kerry Cassidy and the work that I've done with Lorian Fenton. And Duncan O'Finian is a well-known super soldier. But I've never met him outside of the Facebook recently. But again, I really feel bad for that guy. Yeah, I really feel bad for him. I hope that all the stuff that he's been through in his life, he's able to overcome that. Especially some of the details that I heard about how they literally torture these guys when they're children, practically, training them for their training processes and mind conditioning, and it's not a good thing to go through. So, any super soldiers that are out there, those people, deserve our respect, and I know Duncan O'Finian through Project Camelot.
Okay, so he is on the level then, because James was saying, or Genocide was saying, that he had doubts about him, so maybe this will help his doubts come out a little bit better then. Again, I don't know about any of the other super soldiers. Now, I know there's a group of super soldiers out there, because they do work with, Kerry Cassidy and Lorian Fenton, but I'm not that familiar with anybody else other than Duncan O'Finian, especially because he got a lot of exposure through television with Governor Jesse Ventura's show. And, so he was that guy that Jesse Ventura actually talked to that I saw on TV that time.
Yeah, that was a while back. I saw that when it first came out, and then, the whole super soldier phenomena dropped off for me. It had been, only recently, until I came back into contact with Kerry Cassidy, did I start looking into it. And the reason why I looked into it was because the colonel had told me that one of the conditioning, the conditioning processes that they had used on employees at Dulce were derived from MK Ultra. And when I had put two and two together and realized that, at least Duncan O'Finian, I don't know about anybody else, but Duncan O'Finian, I'm pretty sure, had, been subjected to some of that horrible treatment, that mind conditioning stuff. And so, that's how I came about on that. So whether or not, some people believe him, some people don't believe him, I believe Kerry Cassidy, right? And I have no reason to doubt Kerry Cassidy, and she believes him. That's good enough for me.
Okay. Now, also, I think it's Jennifer was asking if, let's see, I got it right here. Okay, you already answered her about New Mexico, but she wants to know these people from the ancient world were saved from the ant god. Okay, I think she probably saw something on TV before about it's either the Hopi or one of the ancient tribes say that they believe that they were actually, come up from underground and they were, remnants of the ant people, or ant people brought them there or helped them out or something.
She's referring to one of the sacred texts of the Hopi Indians right there in Arizona. And the Hopi Indians are the ones who talk about the ant people. They also talk about the snake people as well. And what's funny about that is when you think about the physical characteristics of an ant, you could technically be, mistaking, a humanoid creature that resembles what we think of as a gray. And when you talk about the snake people, again, they could be referring to what we think of as reptilians.
Okay, because they look so similar, but they're really different in their own way.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people ask me about reptilians, and I don't know much about reptilians. And the reason why they ask me is because a lot of the original stories that came out about Dulce were had this heavily embedded component that was reptilians, about the reptilians. But the interview that I conducted with the colonel, you know, from what I know, it's pretty much, it's a gray run facility. Now there was a subcaste that was created by the Greys, another set of Greys, that had a reptile genetic structure, but it was for camouflage, much like in a chameleon. It had nothing to do with, you know, scales or anything like that. You know, that's in the book UFO Highway. It's all in there. So now maybe that genetic subcaste of the Greys, and you know, maybe they had facial characteristics because of the genetic components that were being implanted into them or engineered into their genome, gave them facial characteristics of the that when they were seeing people call them reptilians. I don't know. I really don't know. You know, there are experts out there, you know, like John Rhodes, who's a reptilian expert. I mean, ask him. I really don't know that much about reptilians, you know, beyond, you know, the superficial information that I've picked up. Why? Because, well, I never really studied the whole reptilian aspect. Do I believe there's reptilians? I know that there are people who I trust who believe that there are reptilians, and and they have no reason to lie. These are people, I know one person in particular who told me they were abused by a reptilian. They were tormented by a reptilian. So, you know, there's a lot of information that's out there that still needs to be researched. I'm just not the guy for the reptilian stuff. Not at this time, because I'm so focused on the Dulce facility itself, Project Leonid, which is a multifaceted weapon system that's being developed, which is very dangerous and has the potential to turn into like Skynet from the Predator movie, from the Terminator movie. So, you know, I'm really into that stuff right now. But
I read about that online after you told me about it in an email, and we can come to that here in just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
But before we do, real quick, I want to mention to everybody that's listening in at other places than my site that the call-in number is 832-632-7904. And I want to remind everybody that Anthony's website is www.ufohighway.com. And then his other website for the Leonid project is www.leonidproject.com.
Leonid.
What was that?
It's the other way around, www.projectleonid.com.
Oh, my apologies. Projectleonid.com. And I'm pasting both those links into the chat room periodically during the show. This chat room doesn't link it actually, but you can copy it and paste it into the a different address bar, fresh browser window, and go to the site and check it out. You might want to be known that both his sites has got music. I accidentally went to them and I heard it during our show, and I apologize for that. But at any rate, also, I think it was James was wanting to know about the ET connection to the MK Ultra.
You know, I'm not that familiar with the ET aspect of it. I'm more familiar of the part of MK Ultra that has to do with Joseph Mengele and his affiliation, looking into that area of it. That was what intrigued me the most of it. What I know of is that MK Ultra essentially was a program that was developed by former Nazis and the CIA, which was used to use brute force and mental, you know, conditioning on individuals to make them believe what they wanted them to believe. It also had the potential for altering their psyche by creating multiple personalities and creating trigger mechanisms so that one personality can be shut down and another persona can emerge, i.e. the super soldier phenomena. That's one of the aspects of MK Ultra. But the other thing is the fear and intimidation components which were utilized by the individuals in DSD-3, who is the security force at Dulce, for every subcontractor and prime contractor that worked there at the facility. These are the civilians who work through federal contracting bodies at Dulce. Aspects or facets of the MK Ultra program were predominantly the fear and intimidation aspects were used to control these people, to prevent them from opening their mouths.
Okay. Now, I think one of the people in the chat room just asked for me to type in the phone number, and I think she's planning to call in here any second, so I'm debating whether or not to go ahead and ask her a question or wait for her to call. But she did have another question about the kids that we're talking about. Oh, wait, here she is now. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I was going to ask him, you had it messed up, about the ET connection to the super soldiers, not MK Ultra. You know, like splicing in extra genetics and stuff to make people.
Okay, well, I mean, what I know of with regards to, again, my knowledge on the super soldier phenomena is very limited, but I do know that what I read recently about Duncan O'Finian. Oh, by the way, what I wanted to point out to people was that after I asked Duncan O'Finian to be friends, I didn't think he was going to friend me, but he did. So I was very happy about that. But I don't really want to bug him because I know he's a very, serious kind of guy, and I'm not sure he wants to talk about what occurred to him. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm happy for the friendship, but I'm not going to bug him. I am not aware of any genetic manipulation on the part of the super soldiers, but I am aware of implants. There are implants that have been, surgically implanted, embedded into the bodies of the super soldiers. I think it may have to do with their neural structures. Not too familiar on the super soldier phenomena, but definitely know that there are implants. At least with Duncan O'Finian, he even has X-rays and to show that. So again, that's about the limit of my knowledge on the super soldier programs. You can, I do think, if you want to try and ask Duncan O'Finian personally through Facebook, you probably could. I friended him. I sent a friend request, and I wasn't too sure, that it was going to happen, but it looks like it did. But again, he has a lot of friends on Facebook. I don't know if you want to ask him or not directly.
James is still there?
No, I think he hung up.
Okay. Well, somebody else just tried to call, but they put the phone down before they got a chance to. Okay, he said that his grandma picked up the phone and was trying to call someone else, so he got off from it. That beeping noise we heard, she was picking up the other line in the house.
Uh-oh, okay.
So at any rate, I guess Jennifer will call any minute, but she was asking about the MK Ultra kids, and you may not be familiar with this end, but she's evidently heard that they were being used as sex slaves and other things of that nature back when they were young kids as part of their training, I think it was.
Yeah, again, I really focused, what I did based on the Joseph Mengele aspect because of the conditioning. As far as the sexual, I know that there was within MK Ultra there was drugs. There was they administered drugs. There was hypnosis. There was God. I know that there was types of barbiturates that were and amphetamines that were administered to them. Like heroin and morphine and mescaline and all these types of drugs and whatnot that were used as part of the conditioning programs. But I'm just not that familiar with any aspect to the sexual nature of it. I do know that there are some people that have come forward who have said and have claimed that they were part of an MK Ultra type conditioning program that they ultimately were being. Well, there's one individual in particular who I met in Angel Flyer who was telling me about one of their acquaintances who was used for these strange sexual rituals And they had mentioned that they had, been subjected to conditioning since their early stages of childhood. Whether or not there was an MK, I'm not sure.
Okay. Anthony, I'm sorry. I just picked up that line because I lost that same call 3 times, so I was trying to catch it before I lost it again.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
How are you? It's Jennifer.
I can hear you. Is this Jennifer?
Yes, it is. I have I don't know. I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, I was wondering, talking about the implants. Okay, he was talking about that, and the other day I saw a reportage. What is that called in English? Sorry, yeah, my French is kicking in. I saw a newsletter, if you want, stating from England that this man, he was part of the government, and he witnessed people getting implanted with this micro data chip, if you want, and it's as small as a grain of rice. And
this might interest you. When I was in Dulce, I was interviewing a woman who worked in law enforcement for Dulce. She has to be about 50, 55 years old now. She told me that when she was 9 years old, she had been picnicking there up in an area on the Archuleta Mesa with her mother and father. During the course of that picnic, her mother and father uncharacteristically seemed to be sleeping. Within minutes of them falling asleep, she heard what sounded like a boom, like a sonic boom. Then there was a bright flash of lights. She woke up at the same time that they woke up, because after the light, she didn't even realize that she had been unconscious. They seemed to have woken up about 4 hours later. When she woke up, she said that all of them were complaining about a pain in their arms. And then the pain subsided, so they didn't even think about it. Well, today, I physically felt her elbow and could feel something in there. And it was about no larger than the size of a grain of rice. She told me that since that event, when she was 9 years old, this is some 40 years earlier, she has been periodically experiencing lost time. Now, that is a common trait known for abductees, people that have been abducted by grays. And, one of the most common, resonating, pieces of evidence is lost time.
Yes, lost time is also, but lost time is also part of multiple personality disorder.
You're absolutely right. Because, when one persona drops, the other persona... what you mean is when the primary persona drops and a secondary persona kicks in, the primary persona is unaware of, when that persona regains, control, it is unaware of what happened for, whatever the other persona was doing for maybe 2 or 3 hours or for 2 or 3 months. Yeah, lost time is very common among people that have, been subjected to these types of, MK Ultra type mind conditioning programs, and have been forced to create, to create multiple personalities under torture and whatnot through these programs.
Right. The torture, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. And for the MK Ultra, the MK Ultra, I'm going to tell you something. It started out in Canada, actually. It didn't start out with the government, the U.S. military government, if you want. It started out in Canada. It was this doctor, and he wanted to find a fast and a rapid method to heal people with mental issues. So what he started to do was give them LSD in liquid form, and force them to listen to repetitive, sorry, my accent, repetitive, tapes of you're going to be okay, you're going to be a good wife, you're going to be good to your kids, you're going to be a good wife, you're going to be okay, you're going to, so for about a good 10 hours, 14 hours per day.
Yeah, that was Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron. See, that's one of the parts of MK. Yeah, that's one of the parts of MK Ultra that I'm familiar with because, again, Dr. Ewan Cameron supposedly was utilizing concepts that had been developed by Nazis. Again, that's where the Joseph Mengele aspect comes in, which was this psychic driving concept. Psychic driving concept, which was the utilization of drugs and repetitive type, reprogramming techniques. Yeah.
So then the CIA, but it was the CIA that was supporting him at the psyche hospital here in Canada, here in Montreal, actually my hometown, and it was supported also by the Canadian government. And then that's it. Then the CIA took over and then put it into its military, like you said, by the Nazis. And
there was a Freedom of Information Act. There was a Freedom of Information Act document request in '77, and it essentially showed that the CIA was funding the Canadian experimentation that had been taking place. They were conducting U.S. experiments as well. Both of them illegal, but yeah, that was during the '60s. So, but that all came about because in '77 there was a FOIA request, and that's what exposed Dr. Cameron and all of that psychic driving, repetitive reprogramming, techniques that he was using and administering of drugs, of psychotropic drugs. And those documents are actually available on the internet somewhere. I don't know where, but I know that I've seen them in the past. But
you could go see it. This movie, it's a Canadian movie. It's called The Sleep Room.
Okay.
So that's a good start. So if you want to update or whatever, just know more about the MK.
Thank you very much for telling me about that. I'm definitely going to watch that. So thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. And what they actually did with that is that they want to create CIA assassins, sexual slaves, which they did, and drug exchangers. So, for their own benefit. Yeah. So that's it. So thank you very much for answering my question.
Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Thanks for calling, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
She's a real sweet lady.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, James was in the chat room, and he was saying something to the effect of, Kenzie Leary said he was a part of the MK Ultra stuff and didn't know it, not until a long time later. Are you, by any chance, familiar with that?
No, but I mean, the people that come forth and say that they were part of MK Ultra, you have to give them some level of credence, and the reason why is because what they were doing were conducting these two-stage psychological torture method programs. So they would literally torture these people to shut down areas of their brain, and create these new personalities, these new personas that could be turned off and on at the switch of a button, like with a trigger mechanism, like a word. And to do that, they had to undergo. Now, if you know anything about the methods that were used as part of MK Ultra, they were pretty brutal. They were pretty damn brutal. So, I mean, that's why Director Richard Helms of the CIA wanted all the files destroyed, 73, but it was too late because in 77 they had the FOIA Act, the FOIA request that outed all those documents. So there was a full investigation that was conducted, and a lot of the information that came out of that investigation, a lot of those documents, showed that there was these two-stage psychological torture methods being used on people, innocent people. Psychic driving, Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, Canada. It's called psychic driving.
It seems like I've heard that somewhere before. I'm just not exactly sure where. But I also wanted to make sure we had time to get to the other thing you had going on here, Project Leonid. Leonid, I'm sorry, yeah.
Leonid, Project Leonid. And Leonid actually is an acronym. It actually stands for Low Earth Orbit Nanosatellite Interceptor Defense. What it is a multifaceted weapon system, but it's a very dangerous weapon system. The whistleblower who has come forward has shown that multiple engineers, part of multiple companies working under this black-budgeted project, have already been killed, silenced, or have simply disappeared, and they don't know what the hell happened to them. These were conscientious objectors who showed that there was a calculation, a calculation that showed that there was a high probability that this project, once it's fully deployed, is self-aware. It's autonomous in nature. It is utilizing artificial intelligence, and it could begin to ignore terrestrial commands from like a military base or command center and make its own decisions on what to do, who to attack. And it's a very, very complex system. There are nanosatellites involved that are self-replicating in nature. They have the ability to repair themselves and create more of themselves, utilizing resources on a separate satellite network that has resources that are biomimetic in nature. They utilize, they call it micro-soldering techniques. This is all stuff that was taught to engineers in the military and the government, private sector, defense contractors, the engineering corps of these defense contractors, by grades. This is technical information that has been given to them under technical exchange programs. Grays from Dulce, Grays who work at the Catazone Whack and Hunt facility in California, giving advanced levels of technology to private sector, defense contractors who are creating these systems for the government, well, the military in particular. And that's what Project Leonid is about, but it also has to do with a forthcoming space war with the Chinese. And when I say space war, it's because it involves satellites, satellite technology. But it also talks about the return. Now, this is where it gets hairy, Royce, but in 2012, according to sources that have come forward, one of them who was killed, and we know about, Mr. X, as part of Project Camelot, and another aerospace, employee of a very, very well-known aerospace company who came forth to both Project Camelot and myself, these two individuals have confirmed that they operated at facilities known as vaults. And inside of these vaults, they were privy to information, to all information, whether it was written, videotaped, audio, whatever, any type of information that is being stored and cataloged at the behest of the U.S. government. What information? Information of engagement between extraterrestrials and the United States government, the United States military. UFOs, downed UFOs that have been recovered, especially in the Four Corners area. All that information is being cataloged. Well, these two individuals, Mr. X, who was killed, and my source, who actually came to the Project Camelot people before he came to me, or it was at the same time, he stated that, like Mr. X, he had seen documentation stating that at the end of 2012, there was supposed to be a mass landing event, and that the government knew about this mass landing event, and that there was nothing that they could do to prevent it. the question that I ask and the questions that I pose inside of the book Project Leonid, is there a real connection to these New World Order people, these New World Order, secretive groups, these societies like the Illuminati, who are descendants of progenitors, descendants of the Anunnaki. This is a separate bloodline. They walk like humans, they talk like humans, they look like humans, but there is an alien genetic aspect to them that differs, that makes them different from humans.
So they're hybrids.
They're hybrids, exactly. They're hybrids. Now, here's my point. Are they planning a false flag event for 2012? Are they going to use blue beam technology and HARP technology to make us believe that there is a UFO mass landing event, or is it a real mass landing event? I have information that's telling me that the probability is probable that it is going to be a real mass landing event, and that the Chinese are facilitating that mass landing event. This is not about the Chinese versus the United States. This is not an issue of racism. And it's not even an issue of nationalism. It is an issue of alien human hybrids versus humans. Make sense? The new world, there's a new world order structure out of Hong Kong who practically owns the Chinese government and the Chinese military, and they are utilizing the Chinese as puppets to facilitate this mass landing event, whether or not it's a false flag event or a real event. But the purposes are many, and what we're seeing is that it has to do with China having met all the prerequisites for being selected by this New World Order group. Why? Because they've exhausted all their natural resources. They put themselves in a position to subjugate their own citizens for decades, to essentially create a slave labor caste. Children, school-age children are practically slaves working in the industrial sector. The elderly work in the industrial sector. The prisoners and the Chinese prisoners, the majority of them who are not even criminals, they were just political dissenters. They were just people who dissented from the political establishment and spoke out against the Chinese Communist government. They're slaves. And what are they doing? They have been building everything that the world uses for the last 20 years. Look in your home. Almost 95% of everything in your house was built and created and shipped out of China. But at the same time that they were doing that, the Chinese were also devaluing their own currency, so that the dollar would artificially be inflated along with all the other currencies that operate off of the international dollar standard. Isn't it funny that within the last 5 years alone, the Chinese now that they're ultra wealthy, they have been trying to get many countries to move away from the international dollar standard. If that were to happen, you are going to see a financial collapse unlike one that you have ever witnessed before, and it's going to be a game changer. Well, they're thinking that is what's going to happen at the end of 2012. And Project Leonid talks all about this mass landing event, the Chinese, and Project Leonid. Project Leonid is being developed to combat the Chinese threat. But it's also a threat to us because it has the potential to take over, to become self-aware. It's a fully autonomous system. And utilizing artificial intelligence algorithms, it might make up its own mind on what to do. Here's what's scarier. Project Leonid is utilizing technology from the Greys. Well, there's a group that thinks that if this mass landing event is possible, well, we already know that the Greys believe that the progenitors are returning in 2012. And a lot of people believe that, it's the Anunnaki who are returning in 2012.
But it's not.
We don't know. We just don't know. If it is, how do we know that the Greys have not instituted some type of a backdoor system into this Project Leonid so that those Greys could take over that system and use it against us? I mean, there's just too many variables to throw out right now, but Project Leonid is going to, show everything in a logical format, in a logical order, and allow you to decide what the heck's going on. And my own opinions are going to also be, in Project Leonid, telling you what I think is going to happen. And I don't want to reveal that at this time because there's just way too much information going on. We're talking about the off-shipment of gold to another world. We're talking about, stargates and portal systems. We're talking about the real reason why the U.S. government or the U.S. military has been occupying Iraq. Are we going to see the emergence of FEMA camps? Royce, are we going to see the emergence of FEMA camps all over the U.S.
That's what I've read that, but I'm not, is it really going to be them or another branch of the shadow government?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know. This is what Project Leonid talks about. And up to the last minute, I'm still dealing with experts in many different areas to put this information together. That's what Project Leonid is about. There's an alien component, there's a U.S. military black project component, and there's a geopolitical component that involves also the Chinese threat. So that's what Project Leonid is about.
Well, I've got two questions for you. One of them goes back to what you were talking about earlier about MK Ultra. I didn't get a chance to ask was, where were the implants located most of the time with these people, the super soldiers?
I don't know. I wouldn't know that. Because I'm not that familiar with it. The only thing that I ever saw in the implants was a couple of years back when Duncan O'Finian came out on Governor Ventura's show where he had talked about the implants. My understanding is that these implants, I think, are part of the nervous system to control the neurological, the neurological aspect of the anatomy. That's about the extent of my knowledge on that.
Okay. And also we had the other question about, I had that right in front of me in just a minute ago, and I opened up a different window to see what was going on in chat. We got, which weapon is the WE weapon?
The WE weapon?
I've never heard of it myself.
I'm not familiar with that one. If I am, I'm just not familiar with the acronym.
Also, James was mentioning that the Chinese, now this ain't a question, he's just commenting, and I thought I'd share it.
Sure.
Dumped a lot of U.S. Treasury bills about 6 months ago, and that may go along with some of what you're telling me. And I got a caller coming in. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Anthony was talking about like the alien agenda earlier, about the Greys and stuff. And what I think's going on with that is the aliens are allowing us to use their technology to take over the world for the one world government. Then after the one world government's established and the figureheads like the Illuminati take control of the world, all the Greys have to do then is kill the Illuminati off and make themselves rulers of the world. All the infrastructure already be in place to control the population. So they're using us against ourselves to conquer ourselves and put the infrastructure into place and then conquer the figureheads of that to completely take over. We're enslaving ourselves, I think, is what we're doing. Anyway, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, James.
Yeah, that was an interesting statement. And, there's truth to that statement. There's absolute truth to that statement. You have to wonder, why are these technology exchange programs out of Los Alamos, the Los Alamos peripheries, particularly Dulce and the Cabazon Wackenhut facilities, occurring between Greys and our military? Why are they so willing to give us this technology? On the surface, what we learned from the colonel is that, one, there's a New World Order component that operates out of AFOSI Kirtland and DSD-3 at Dulce, and that they practically own the Greys, and that we have a diplomatic component set in place exchanging natural resources with the Greys. But it could go deeper than that. It could mean that the Greys are setting us up. They're setting us up, and we don't even know it. And that's why I mentioned this possibility of a backdoor component into the technology that they're giving us, so that it can be commandeered away from us at the blink of an eye. And we would never have known that was going to happen.
Right. Now, also, Jennifer just corrected that and said that it was the EM weapons.
She may be EM weapons. The only thing I can think of EM is like electromagnetic. I don't know.
But that would make a lot of sense about electromagnetic, because I've heard a lot about that going on myself.
Yes. No, I just pulled it up. I have an archive here of acronyms. She is talking about directed energy weapons, electromagnetic weapons.
That's interesting, because I just recently had a guest on a few months ago that claims that she believes the World Trade Center was brought down with a similar weapon to what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. She's talking about electromagnetic directed energy weapons. The directed energy weapons that I'm familiar with are plasma-based directed energy weapons that are being developed by Grays. There could be electromagnetic, radiation-based weapons are being developed by Grays, but I'm aware of the plasma-based weapons. And that's the reason why they created the Cabazon-Wackenhut facility over here in California. Again, another Indian reservation. Unlike with Dulce, on the surface, multiple people were killed during the construction of this facility because they were going to out the true nature of the facility. Eisman, who was an attorney who was going to bring a federal lawsuit against the Cabazon Reservation and several other interests that, unfortunately for him, reached all the way up to the executive branch. Well, they found him dead in his bathroom. They also found Danny Casolaro, a freelance journalist who was working on a book called The Octopus that talked about Cabazon, dead. They found him dead. Why? Because he had discovered many things. One of the things I know of, based on my sources, have told me that he discovered the aspect of Cabazon which had directly involved the Greys and the executive administration's knowledge of the Greys, and the fact that plasma-based directed energy weapons were going to be developed there, and that there was going to be highly toxic output that was going to be dumped into underground storage facilities on the reservation, but they were environmentally unsound and had the potential for creating an ecological disaster. And that's why they killed him. There's a lot more people that ended up dead with respect to the Cabazon-Wackenhut underground facility. And by the way, there is an underground facility there. There are underground facilities everywhere, Royce. You just got to look for them. I just found one not far from my own house. Beale Air Force Base constructed an underground facility with living quarters and whatnot for the Titan 1 missile complex, project, Titan 1 missile project. There was 3 of them that they had built in the Southern Buttes, north of Beale, and there's one south of Beale.
I was given to understand from what I read online that there's hundreds upon hundreds of miles of underground network tunnels that's going out, that goes from, one place in the United States to another place in the United States, so that they can run their high-speed rail cars from point A to point B and get there a lot faster than you can be any other kind of travel.
Well, listen to this. If you don't believe the information that's coming out in Project Leonid, all you have to do is read the news. Just a few days ago, there was a 3-year study that caused a bunch of controversy on Capitol Hill. Some students and a Georgetown professor, who was a former top-level Pentagon strategist, they identified locations of 3,000 miles of underground tunnels in China built by the military, used by the Chinese military to store massive amounts of weapons arsenals.
Yes, I read that same article. That's the one I was telling you about that I read that day you sent me the email and mentioned the Project Leonid that you were working on it. First thing I wanted to do was learn about it, so I Googled it. And I found out about that same thing. I mean, thousands of miles of nothing but nuclear weapons down there almost. And man, the size that makes it look like we only got 1 or 2 missiles, so to speak, in other words.
Yeah, well, it's 3,000 miles of tunnels that the Chinese admitted to constructing. There's a yet to be released 363-page report that right now it's got everybody in Washington up in arms, and there's even talks of congressional hearings based on the study that was conducted out of Georgetown by this professor and his students, because he happens to be a top-level Pentagon guy, and you have some very bright students, and they found that there are, in fact, 3,000 miles of tunnels there. Now, it's not all nuclear weapons. It's mostly probably going to be conventional weapons and experimental weapons. And hell, it could be weapons that are utilizing alien technology that we don't know about. You know, the statement that I have on my website, you know, comes from Trinity, who's a senior software engineer who was a technical consultant on Project Leonid. The words he said 2 years later when I spoke to the colonel damn near word for word said the same exact directive, same information that Trinity said 2 years before, back in 2008 to me. So these guys are being told this information, again, almost as if it is a directive, so that they memorize it, so that it's embedded into their brain, so that every time that they tell it, the exact point of this whole project, you know, comes out. Now, of course, the colonel didn't mention Leonid. He didn't know anything about Leonid. At least I don't think he did. But he did know about the Chinese government being controlled by the New World Order. He did know about the Chengdu district, you know, having a massive underground facility. Well, the proof's in the pudding. The news just came out. Just Google it. You know, it's a 3-year study and out of Georgetown, and there it is, folks. There it is. I made the Project Leonid announcement before that news came out. How do you like them apples?
Yeah, they're ready for a definite big battle, but the real question here is that what they're really planning to do, or is that like a backup plan they really plan to, you know, use as against themselves, like James said, with the technology, but if that don't work, they're prepared to step in and do it by force, maybe?
You know, God, I really don't want to give too much of the book away, but what we know, Royce, is that the Chinese military and government has been controlled by this New World Order faction out of Hong Kong. Li Ka-shing is this man's name. He's one of the richest men in the world. He is the richest man in Asia. And again, we are almost certain that he has Illuminati blood ties, you know, going back, you know, thousands of years, you know. Again, you know, I was telling you earlier before the show started, everybody seems to think that the New World Order and the Illuminati are going to be all these Western European types. Hell no. It goes way deeper than that. You have Illuminati out of Hong Kong, out of Shanghai. One of the richest man in the world out of Mexico City, Carlos Slim Helú, this Mexican guy. He's an Illuminati New World Order guy. And get this. Isn't it funny that guy, a Mexican, can trace his bloodline all the way back to Lebanon in the Middle East? Isn't it funny that his bloodline goes all the way back to the Middle East? No, it's not funny, and it's not a coincidence, because every single one of these individuals in the New World Order that are Illuminati, you know, Ostra Albus, the descendants of the progenitors, these Anunnaki, they're all related. They have that one thing in common. They don't have to look like, you know, all the same, but genetically, if you look into their genetics, you're going to find that they have an alien component, you know, it's part of their genetic structure.
Yeah, and also, you were mentioning to me earlier, showing to me some coins that you had gotten that were pure copper and pure copper bars. Would you like to tell some of the people here, share with them what you were sharing with me?
Well, it's not just copper. You know, I bought one of the things, and it's not just me. It's a lot of people. They're investing in gold. They're investing in silver. And again, you're not investing in copper. People have to understand, you don't invest in copper. Copper's not an investment. One, it's not a precious metal. It's a base metal. But it is the people's currency. History has proven that. You know, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, societies in China and in Europe, you know, were all using copper. You know, we know about that because it's a pragmatic type of commodity. It's something that we could use. We can make, you know, arrow tips out of it. We can make wire out of it. We can make blades out of it. We can make bullets out of it. It's just something that we can use. I mean, we can make dishes out of it. You know, it's a conductor of electricity. Well, gold, silver, and copper, a lot of people are investing in it because they're recognizing the signs that fiat money, paper money, is going to be worthless one of these days. If a post-apocalyptic society is to emerge, you better believe that paper money is going to be worthless. People are going to be trading, copper, silver, and gold. They're going to hold on to those gold, and they're not really going to get rid of that for any reason, really, because it's just very valuable. Silver, you're going to see people, exchanging goods for silver and bartering and whatnot. But definitely copper. I have a lot of copper coins. I have a lot of silver coins and bullion bars. It's because, I'm just preparing for the future. Copper is not an investment. It's a purchase, but it's a risk mitigation purchase. You're not going to be able to go to the store with a 1 ounce coin of gold and expect to buy a loaf of bread and some, supplies. Because you paid $1,700, at least today, for 1 troy ounce of gold. But, the same amount of copper is just pennies on the dollar. But that is what people will use in a post-apocalyptic society. They'll barter things, stuff for stuff, or the people's currency, which is silver and copper and gold, for those things. So, that's what that was all about. And by the way, I'm not the only guy that knows or talks about this. There's hundreds of people, thousands of them out there on YouTube and the internet that tell you about, prepare for the future, buy supplies, buy, if you can, find an area that, in a rural community near a water source. There are people that are taking precautions. I mean, hell, even in Northern Europe, up there in Norway or wherever it is, they got that big underground facility where they're packing away seeds and plants, and you know what I'm talking about, right, Royce? That place?
Yeah, in fact, I think Thomas Horn is getting people set up with supplies for the coming New World Order. In fact,
that's right. So again, that's the reason why you see guys like me buying silver and copper. Gold is out of reach for the average person. Come on, who's going to pay $1,700? For a troy ounce of gold? The rich are the only ones that can afford that. When you and I were talking earlier, I was telling you all these New World Order corporations that were occupying Iraq, they weren't there for the oil. We didn't see 1 drop of oil come out of Iraq. Yet we were there for over a decade. Why were we there? Why were they there? They were there because the American taxpayer was dumping billions and billions of dollars a month of U.S. dollars into Iraq, first to depose the dictator, then to instill democracy, then to reconstruct the country. Well, that's where the real money was being made. It was, while the rest of the world was devaluing the U.S. dollar and inflation was taking place, these Illuminati corporations like Blackwater and CACI and Halliburton were right there in Iraq, sucking the U.S. taxpayer dry. They never wanted oil. Hell, if we wanted oil, all we had to do was go to Libya. It took us only 3 months to get all the oil we ever wanted and are ever going to need. Not to mention the fact that we already have reserves here in the U.S., like right there in North Dakota, which are just, going to blow the lid off of the whole oil conspiracy. Look, the Libyans had oil. Muammar Gaddafi. The oil there is the oil we love, the oil that our refineries covet the most. And they have more oil in Libya than Saudi Arabia, and most people are not even aware of that fact. That's the reason why the U.S. jumped on the UN bandwagon, went in there and deposed Gaddafi in 3 months in the same way that we did with, Saddam Hussein. What are those corporations doing? They're taking those U.S. dollars in the hundreds of billions and they're converting them into what? They're converting them into a commodity. What commodity? They're converting them into gold. Why? Well, Project Leonid is going to tell you why. That book is going to tell you why they're converting it into gold. Listen, don't get all nationalistic on me and go, oh, well, Halliburton's an American company. That's in the good old USA. No, it's not. Halliburton was an American company. To skirt having to pay taxes like you and I do, they closed up shop in the U.S., and guess what? They're now a Dubai corporation, right there next to Saudi Arabia, the little kingdom of Dubai. They operate out of Dubai. They're not even American. So your taxpayer dollars that went to Halliburton and are probably still going to Halliburton and every other Illuminati New World Order corporation is going overseas to the coffers in the banks of Dubai in the form of what? From dollars converted into gold. It gets real deep. It gets real deep. And my book, Project Leonid, is going to cover all of this. And hell yes, there's an ET component to it as well. No, I'm not crazy.
No, I don't really figure you are. But you do a lot of research, so you can tell this is really important to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, man. Because it's going to affect all of us, Royce. It will have an effect on us, our children, and our children's children. We need to be careful. We need to be aware of what's going on. Royce, for the last 2 days, somebody's been installing something on my roof of my home, and I don't know what the hell they're putting up there, and I got to figure out what the heck's going on. I'm being monitored now. I'm being surveilled. Why? Because probably, the book Project Leonid is coming out. Probably because UFO Highway came out. They talked about an underground facility that supposedly doesn't exist, according to your serious UFO researchers, the guys who will only accept empirical data. Well, guess what, folks? Those places do exist, and I found one of them. At least I found the evidence that the U.S. government is right there in Dulce. Deal with it. Believe it.
And the Indians now, the natives, the people who are there, are they aware that Dulce's being used for this purpose?
They know that there's something there. They know that there's something there. I'm not going to say, and there's no way in hell that they're in collusion. There's just no way. Is there an innocent level of compliance? Maybe, but not collusion. Absolutely not. Because these people are concerned. They're concerned. Listen, the guy that took me up there, he was a 7-year veteran officer of the Hickory Police Department. When earlier this summer, he had taken 2 guys from the Phoenix Suns basketball team up there on a hunting trip. And they were confronted by 3 guys armed heavily in military garb. What stood out to him was that they could not identify what branch of the military they were from. They were halfway up the way to the mesa, and they were told by these guys, "You're violating a restricted order, and you need to vacate the premises immediately." Well, this guy, who was a Hickory Apache, told them, "No, this is Hickory Apache land. I'm an Apache. I belong here, and I'm going to go. I'm going to go up there." And they said, "No, today you're not." And then they pointed their guns at them and told them to turn around. Well, when he got back to town, it turns out for a whole week, other guides, other people that were going up there have been experienced the same exact type of encounters. Somebody's up there doing something. Well, we found, U.S. government property. Was it there for 5 years? Was it there for 5 months? I don't know. I don't care. It's U.S. government property, and it was up there on the mesa where it wasn't supposed to be. Still there, Royce?
Okay, yeah. And I know there's a lot of things that's been going on down there in Dulce. I know you and Norio was working on it together for quite some time. And you and Colonel X, y'all went into great depth about, I want to say it was SDD3, if I remember, was one of the units there. Can you tell the listeners a little something about that part?
Yeah, DSD3 is actually the group. It's DSD3.
DSD3, yes. I'm sorry. I got it mixed up.
It's okay. No, it actually stands for Dulce Security Division 3. And the reason why it has the number 3 assigned to it is because it's 3 branches of the military. The way they operate there, even though there's 4 branches, technically 5, but 4 branches of the military, you have the Navy, the Marines, the Army, and the Air Force. They operate under proxies. One of the proxies comes out of a U.S. naval air installation, which is China Lake. So both the Marines and the Navy are under that one designation, under a proxy through White Sands Missile Range over there in New Mexico. So it's all detailed heavily in the book UFO Highway, exactly how it's structured. there are 3 proxies, one for the Air Force, one for the Army, and one that encompasses both the Marines and the Navy. And that's who DSD-3 is. There's a group that's also there called Installation Command that is the administrative leg, or the administrative arm of those proxies. DSD-3 is pretty much its own, its own security entity, but predominantly made up of those same individuals from the military.
Now, also, when I was reading that book, one of the things that came up I found very interesting was that the colonel talked about a little battle that took place back in 1979. This really piqued my interest because I had a Joan Richards on my show was either several months or a year or two ago, and she was telling me that her husband to this day is in jail to keep him quiet about that actual thing that was going on at Dulce back in 79. And I think, in fact, other steps were taken to silence Snyder as well, wasn't they?
Well, Phil Schneider's dead now. So, but the thing is that Joanne Richards, I really don't know that much about Joanne Richards' story, but her husband is in prison. I do know that much. But Joanne Richards is actually a friend with Lorian Fenton, who's my editor and publicist. And Joanne Richards has that whole Dulce story based on her husband's experiences. I'm not that familiar with it. I never really looked into her story. But I know she just recently spoke at the Marin Sonoma MUFON group, which is headed by Lorian Fenton, and that's something I would like to look into. Maybe I should have a discussion with her and see if there's any cross-correlating data. I just don't know enough about her husband's involvement with Dulce. But there has to be other people out there besides the colonel, besides Phil Schneider, and besides the 2 law enforcement officers who I recently identified that were the gentlemen who were flown into the southwest portion of the Mesa, the entrance there, in 79 when this battle occurred. I know exactly who they were. One of them was a New Mexico State police officer. It wasn't Gabe Valdez, like most people assume. And the other one was a high-ranking Jicarilla law enforcement officer. And I have both of their names. They're both deceased now, but I know their children are still around, and their children know it was them, and their children don't want that information to come out.
Right.
But I have the full-blown confirmation.
Well, I know she was mentioning to me, and like you say, you're not familiar with it, but that they supposedly, our military does have interstellar flight capability, but they're keeping a lid on it, and it was back engineered from ET technology. Oh, well, I mean, yeah, we have a technology that is so advanced that to release it now would just send shockwaves to societies around the world, and we're not going to do that. The military has access to all of this technology, and they have already created experimental craft. That's one of the things that I've been telling people lately. Dulce represents an area that is smack dab in the middle of multiple U.S., military installations. You have naval air installations, the U.S. Air Force. Hell, there's even a couple of Marines and Army installations in Colorado, and the entire area surrounding Dulce. Dulce's in the middle of it all. I think that Dulce represents this, what just happens to be a highway for experimental craft that's being developed at some of these installations. And that's why there are so many UFO sightings in Dulce. So if they wanted to run a black flag operation, they could actually just use their own UFOs, so to speak, or what we would not recognize them from another UFO, and they could just dress up their own people as extraterrestrials, and they could really make a very convincing story, couldn't they? They sure could. If they wanted to, they sure could. So if anybody ever does think they see an extraterrestrial land, they may want to check and see if it's a costume he's wearing or something if they're able to. Yeah. But, definitely, again, the Joanne Richards, is talking about stuff that I'm just not familiar with because I've not read her
I don't know if it's her book or her husband's book. I really don't know. But I would love to eventually meet up with many people like her who have stories about Dulce. That way I could see if there's cross-correlating information. As a matter of fact, it was just this past weekend that she spoke at the Marin Sonoma MUFON. So I missed that, but it's okay. I'm friends with Lorian Fenton and could probably get in touch with her if I needed to.
Okay, now, James was saying in the chat room that people don't get it. The military don't have this technology. The aliens aren't giving them the technology. The aliens are allowing the government to use the technology the aliens have. So he's being really specific. At least that's what he believes. I'm not sure if he's what his sources are, though.
Well, he's probably right. You know, I was having a discussion on Facebook with one of the friends that I have there who's interested in all of this, and he asked me about, because again, I'm a software engineer, so he's asking me about the levels of software, that is being created by the Greys and utilized by the military, and what are some of the aspects to it with regards to full disclosure and full understandings on the part of the military. And I told him that they're not going to give them, they're going to give them probably hundreds of thousands of lines of source code, but it'll be what we call in the business, software business, obfuscated. It'll be like obfuscated so that they can't backwards engineer it. However, they will give them functions that will allow them to use areas of it to do certain things, advanced things, like maybe, artificial intelligence or, other things similar to that. So, yeah, there's the possibility that the aliens are giving us technology that we can use but don't fully understand. But again, if some of my sources are correct, we pretty much own these Greys out of Dulce and Cabazon, and, we probably have some level of accord with them, some level of agreement with them that states, we can come down pretty hard on them if they tried to fool us or do something, along those lines.
Okay. Well, I was going to mention we got like 15 minutes remaining in this show. Actually, I'm saying we do. I never did ask you if you wanted to go 1 hour or two, and we've been almost 2, and I hope you don't mind that, but it's been very interesting talking to you. What I wanted to say, though, was, is there anything that I haven't thought to ask or that we haven't had a chance to get out that you'd like to share?
At this point, I've been doing a lot of work on wrapping up Project Leonid, and there's this whole aspect of the Chinese military and the New World Order that's just going to shock the hell out of people. Because most people would never in their wildest dreams imagine that an entity as huge as the Chinese could be under the control of someone else. And they're in for a surprise. And that's one of the things that, I've been talking about, just as of this week only, because I've not shared that information with too many people, other than the whistleblowers that I'm working with. And but that's about it. That's just the Project Leonid information. But we did talk about that. We did hit on that. There's one thing that I wanted to mention to you. At my website, UFOhighway.com, there's a discussion forum. And after the show, I would love it if your people could go there and look into this one thread called Final Definitive Proof of Gray's Existence. In it, what they're going to see is snapshots of video footage that were taken by Dr. Lear in Turkey. Now, this is back in, 2008 or 2009. And what you're going to see is that they used a 200-powered optical 400-millimeter lens with an electronic doubler. Not only did they capture a UFO hovering above Turkey, they also found Greys inside it that were poking out of a portal. They were standing out of an open portal. And if you look real close, you can literally see a Grey moving around. And there was another show that Dr. Lear was on some time ago, and this was in Kumburgaz, Turkey, and there were 2 Grey occupants. There was a zoom in. There's an image on my website where I have a zoom in of the area. that literally shows grays, and there are. It's just amazing, Royce. It is amazing. You see the UFO, you can see the grays standing in it. It's not that big of a UFO. Probably could hold just 2 or 3 people. But this thing literally was shifting its shape in midair. And this was in June of 2008. And there are links under it'll say case details, and there are 2 links to the YouTube videos that you need to look. So if you go into that thread, you can look for the words case details. It's in bold, and there are 2 links there to the videos. And if you don't find it, at least the photos of the grays are there. There's close-ups of them. You can see them. They're plain as day. So this is proof. This is more proof that these things actually exist. They're there. We know that they're there.
I'll make sure I guide the listeners over there by posting a link to it tomorrow. Pardon me. But I don't want to, go to the site right now because I know it's got that music playing in the background. But I'll make sure they get the links to it tomorrow. Oh, and Jennifer said she's already been there and she saw the pics of that. And James may have already as well. And I don't know who else may have looked. Whoever might be listening might have, as far as that goes. But at any rate, James also wanted me to give you this example. The U.S. government doesn't have UFOs. The aliens pilot the UFO, fly whoever the military says to fly, wherever they say to fly them to. That's what he wanted me to share with you.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna. Again, that's there's a lot of differing opinions on that. James is probably right, but there are a lot of differing opinions on exactly how the UFOs are being utilized and by who. And here's one of the things I could tell James. In Dulce, there is a strong belief that the UFOs that are being seen, some of them, are being commandeered and used by, they're being flown by U.S. military personnel as part of these MyLabs programs, these military abductions programs for these individuals that they capture and they utilize in the facility at Dulce for the genetic experiments. That's one of the strongest opinions that's coming out of Dulce. A lot of people believe that there is one craft in particular, that's Copper one that I'm telling you about, which is part gray technology, part, conventional military engineered technology. It's like a hybrid UFO that's being used for MyLabs. And, this copper-shaped disc has been seen, in 1996, one of them crashed right there in Dulce. And there was a small-scale infiltration of the government into the township, confiscating cameras, confiscating any video camera, anything that could be used that could have been used, and everything was returned, but it was all returned deleted in the media, or with the media completely missing. And I have full confirmation on that from over a dozen different families there in the Dulce area.
Okay. Now, also, James had one more comment he wanted to share. And he was sharing this with me the other day, and I'm not sure where he's getting it, but I do talk to this guy. He's a friend of mine as well as a listener. But he was saying that the abduction beam is a blue cylinder about 8 inches in diameter. Maybe you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not. I'm not familiar with the technology that they utilize to abduct, their subjects. I'm not that familiar with that. So, again, he may be right. I've not heard that.
Right. Alrighty. And I was also going to ask you if you had any last-minute thoughts you'd like to share with us.
I really want to encourage everybody to go to ProjectLeonid.com and read the statement there. If you can, try and make an attempt at getting the book UFO Highway. Share it with your friends. Get the message out to as many people as you can. I got a lot of information there at UFOHighway.com. Again, Royce, I have a discussion forum for when your show's not on. People want to come over to UFO Highway and talk about your show, talk about whatever. We got a lot of information there. And, we just kind of kicked it off, really, and people are now starting to sign up. And, it's not that big, but it's where I put my pertinent data. And I also have a Facebook, so you can Facebook me. Just look for Anthony F. Sanchez. I'm on Facebook. I would love to be friends with you. You guys have questions, you have information you want to share, we can do it through Facebook. We can also do it through my website, UFOHighway.com.
Okay. Also, I was listening to you sharing your links one more time in the chat room before we got out of here, and that's www.ufohighway.com and www.projectleonid.com.
Yep.
And you can get his book, The UFO Highway, from his website. The other book don't come out to January or February.
That's right.
And also, it's funny you should mention what you did about that book, about sharing it, because I think it was just yesterday, James wanted to know if I'd share the copy you gave me, and I told him I couldn't do it because you had given it to me. I didn't have your permission.
Well, the thing is that most people do not know this, but UFO Highway came out a year ago, and it was sold as a PDF file. And unfortunately, what happened was we calculated that over 10,000 copies of the ebook were stolen. They were illegally downloaded from a list of websites that we found, including Above Top Secret and a whole bunch of websites, and even Pirate Bay. I mean, and that data, a lot of that data is completely, been eliminated from the book. Though the print version of the book has been heavily updated with a lot of the information connecting Dulce to the Cabazon Latin Hunt facility, Project Camelot, their involvement. So there's a lot of new data in the printed version of the book. We have no plans at this time to release that book or any further books from Strange Lights Publishing in PDF format because it was prolific, the amount of theft that occurred. So, that's why we don't do the PDFs anymore. It's unfortunate because a lot of people like to use their Kindle readers and whatnot, and we just don't do that anymore.
Right.
Maybe the policy will change in the future, but for right now, we need to recoup a lot of what we lost because of that initial theft. Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too. Now, Anthony, I wanted to thank you for coming back to my show. This is your second time being here, and I really enjoyed it both time. And I'd like to, keep up with you and help you, you keep my listeners informed, to your forum, to my show. I'm always getting new listeners, especially now that I've been, adding these, shows over to YouTube and other places. So I'd love to have you back again in the future.
Oh, thank you so much, Royce. I love your show. You've got great listeners, and, it's always a pleasure to be on the Paranormal Palace Radio, so thank you, and I hope you have me back again sometime in the future. Hopefully after Project Leonid comes out, we can have a show on that, so thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'm going to go ahead and call this a wrap because I got to get up in the morning and get my son John off to school, so.
All right.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you, Royce. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Started to put out my own books based on research that I've done into the areas of Dulce, human origins, HARP, and Project Bluebeam. And right now, I'm about to release a book called Project Leonid, and the website for that is www.projectleonid.com. And Leonid is spelled just like the Leonid asteroids, the Leonids, and people are familiar with the asteroids, the Leonids. It's like it's a meteor shower. Excuse me. What am I thinking? It's a meteor shower. The Leonids. It's spelled the same exact way. Leo, like the constellation Leo, Leo, and Nid, Leonid. Anyway, so Project Leonid is about a classified, it's a top secret project. It's a multifaceted weapon system that's being developed. That's very dangerous, and there's been a lot of engineers, part of the project, who have either disappeared or been found dead. Supposedly they committed suicide. Well, we're going to look into that because I know people who, know a lot about this topic, and I really don't want to give out their names right now. I could tell you that through. I don't want to give out their names at this time. Maybe it's after the book comes out. because I don't want to draw unwanted attention to the people involved with that. I mean, already, Royce, I don't know if you know about this, but I was visited twice by AFOSI out of Bill Air Force Base, and after the second visit, somebody, I don't know who, I'm not going to say AFOSI because I don't want to get harassed by them again, but somebody broke into my house and stole a 500 gigabyte research hard drive.
Oh, wow.
That hard drive was encrypted, but, you know, the government has technology to decrypt things, and, everybody that was in that, I have a small group, a small circle of trusted individuals who were part of, putting together the Dulce interview, the whole thing, the information with the colonel, and they've been harassed now. Well, they're being harassed by AFOSI, so, I mean, I'm not going to say it was them, but why are they harassing these people? How did they find out about these people if not through the stolen hard drive? That's a half terabyte's worth of data that's been compromised. Do I have a backup of it? Yeah, I have a backup, but still, it's been compromised, and I've gotten a lot of, communication from people that are part of my circle that they're really upset. They know it's not my fault, but they're still upset at me. I also met with the tribal council presidents. You gotta remember, this is a sovereign nation. They got their own president, their own vice president. They got an entire executive branch that operates this nation, the Jicarilla Apache Nation. And by the way, I want to just say this on the record. The Jicarilla people are the most beautiful people I have ever met. Everybody that I met there in Dulce was so kind, so patient, and, they're just great people. And I'm very privileged and honored to be affiliated with them, through my book, UFO Highway. I have a very, very, very close set of friends who are Jicarilla Apache, and I'm really excited to be able to call them whenever I want and go there and spend time with them because they're just wonderful people. Well, Governor Ventura, for whatever reason, was not able to get permission to film on the reservation. I was. They let me film. They did not let me interview people on the reservation from Dulce, but they said if I wanted to conduct interviews with any of the Jicarilla Apache Nation, citizens, members, I had to do it off the reservation. So we conducted interviews in Lumberton, Chama, and ultimately the majority of them over in Taos. I was in Taos, New Mexico that week, later that week, for Janet Saylor's ASPE symposium. It's the Alliance Studying Paranormal Experiences.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a great, opportunity for me because I was going to still be within, just within a couple hours of Dulce. And sure enough, I had a bunch of people from Dulce come out to Taos. A couple of them stayed with us in our hotel room, believe it or not. And we conducted interviews. We had full-blown discussions. And the most amazing discussion I had was with a current chief of police from a neighboring community. Now, Royce, I cannot say which neighboring community because you know how it is in politics. One day an individual, may want to run for office or something, and in this case, it actually turns out that's what's going to happen. So at this point in time, they do not want to be, made public. But I can tell you this, that individual was at the table with me, Janet Saylor of ASPE, and Rick Prestel of Sacramento MUFON. So I have witnesses to this. Not only do I have those two individuals as my witness, but the man's adult sons were right there at the table. I don't know, Louis, but it would be very hard for me as a father to sit there at a table with some complete strangers and tell lies. You get my drift?
Right. I don't want to be lied to.
Yeah, this guy was a very, very, come on, he's the chief of police of a community there. And he was found out because that was the only area that the information was held on these, you know, sources of mine, and it's been compromised. To some extent, there's still information that they'll never get a hold of because it wasn't on a hard drive to begin with. But that's the kind of stuff I've been dealing with, you know. I just went up to Dulce in October, conducted a field investigation. I went up to the Archuleta Mesa, up to the very top, and I found, you know, illegally placed U.S. government property. I mean, it literally says property of the U.S. government. Well, one, that's wrong. Why? Because it's not supposed to be there.
Right.
It's illegal for them to have a presence there in a sovereign nation, you know, without, you know, some levels of accord with the Apache, with the Hickory Apache Reservation, the Tribal Council. Well, I talked to them. There is no accord in existence between the Hickory Apache Nation and the United States military, let alone the United States government, you know, to allow a military presence up there. Well, we found that, you know, immediately after making that discovery, you know, the whole left side of my body from the shoulder up, so my shoulder, and then my head, all the way up to the tip of my head and my face, has become paralyzed. And no, it's not Bell's palsy. They don't know what it is. And I have it on authority from an intelligence operative who confirmed to me that what the symptoms of what I'm exhibiting came about through a nanofraction dosage of the curare plant, which is a South American toxic, you know, a highly toxic plant, and the pufferfish venom, pufferfish poison. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with right now. I'm still seeing specialists. I'm going to see a specialist on the 5th, or excuse me, the 5th of January, who specializes in these types of, you know, neurotoxins. It's gotten real bad. But that was because of the research I did in Dulce. I got there 2:30 in the morning on the 24th, which was a Monday. They had wanted me to be there on Friday of the 21st because I was supposed to meet with Governor Jesse Ventura and the television crew from the True TV network. Renee, the producer of the show, called or tried to get in contact with me, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. And to my surprise, that morning when I got there, well, 8 o'clock that morning, 8:30 that morning, I met with Leon Reval, who's the public relations officer of the Hickory Apache Nation, and
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Anthony Sanchez. He's the author of UFO Highway, and he's also got another new book out. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it was pronounced something like Leonid or Leonid. Leonid, okay. And we're going to be talking about a little bit about both of those books tonight. I know a lot of people probably already know Anthony. He's been in the research game for quite some time now, and he's been working with people like Norio Hayakawa, and been getting some interesting reports out of Dulce. And he's talked to a guy who goes by Colonel X because he doesn't want to be his identity revealed because he's blowing a whistle. And he goes into great detail in his UFO Highway in an interview with this guy about what's going on at Dulce, how long it's been going on, you know, how long alien interactions have been going on here on Earth. It's a really in-depth thing. I really recommend the book for anybody that can manage to get it. But real quick, like, I'm going to let Anthony, you know, kind of tell you guys what got him interested in the UFO phenomena.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on your show, first of all, Royce. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm. Well, back in 1989, most of the people that are familiar with who I am are familiar with this story, but in 1989, when Area 51 started to emerge as a phenomenon, within the UFO circles and alien community and whatnot, alien research community. That's when I took a big interest in, UFOs as, from a research perspective. I was 19 years old in 1989, and it was, I figured, well, I'm old enough now, and I'm just getting into computers, and it's something that I felt that it was the next logical step for me. And since that time, it's been about 20 years now. I've been heavily involved in researching UFOs, studying the whole phenomena of exopolitics, discussing whether or not, is it possible that there could be alien life, and what about alien life among us here on Earth? So I read so many books from so many different authors on the topic, and now, I just, as a former officer of the Hickory Apache Nation. I ain't going to go into it much more beyond that, other than that, I'll just say it was more than a decade's worth of service as a police officer. Now, this guy was amazing. He told us so much information, it literally blew our socks off. One of the things he did that shocked the heck out of me was I had received some notes, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of papers of documentation from the late Paul Benowitz that were found at an estate sale that were acquired by Mel Fabregas. So Mel had shared that information with me. Now, I was digging through these papers, digging through them, and one of the things I found was a sketch of a UFO that had been created by Paul Benowitz.
Oh, wow. Now, Paul Benowitz no longer with us, right?
Owned a company called Thunder Scientific Corporation, which was literally smack dab right next to, if not on, Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. He had developed a product that was being purchased through a federal contract by Kirtland Air Force Base, well, the U.S. Air Force, for some of their aircraft. I think it was jet aircraft. I have to look into it. Anyhow, Greg Bishop wrote a great book on Paul Benowitz called, I think it was called Project Beta. It's a fantastic book, and it's a really, really detailed book on Paul Benowitz's life. So, Paul Benowitz was the guy that had developed his own equipment, proprietary radio equipment, and he had triangulated what he believed to be alien signals between Kirtland Air Force Base, Dulce, New Mexico, and the Manzano Nuclear Storage Facility, or Coyote Canyon, which is right next to it. He had triangulated signals that he believed were alien in nature. Well, when he did that, he brought it to the attention of AFOSI there at Kirtland Air Force Base. Well, they got all hot and bothered over it, and the first thing that they did was assign Bill Moore. Bill Moore wrote the Roswell incident, which was a really, really, famous book. As a matter of fact, he collaborated with Stanton Freeman on it. So he was assigned, well, the Air Force went up to him, and they felt differently because he was the most renowned expert on UFOs at the time, reachable, attainable. They paid him to be a disinformation agent and feed Paul Benowitz a bunch of disinformation. Not just feeding him information, but messing with the guy's psyche. I mean, ultimately, Paul Benowitz ended up in a mental institution. Well, there's some dispute to that. I met with the researcher in Taos and said, don't believe that he died in a mental institution.